Hey, it's Pete Cohen and welcome to the Mi365 podcast series, episode 143. And today's podcast is an amazing interview with Andrea Mclean. Now, Andrea Mclean was the former weather lady on GMTV and also a presenter, and now she's the presenter of Loose Women. She's an amazing lady and been through a lot in her life, and now she's just brought a book out called Confessions of a Menopausal Woman. We're going to be talking about that. We're going to be sharing her story, which I'm sure will inspire you on your journey to greatness. And remember, this podcast is brought to you by Mi365 Elite, the #1 coaching opportunity in the world for you to learn the things you really need to learn for you to be your very, very best. Go and check out mi365.me/elite. That's mi365.me/elite. But for now, let's sit back, let's enjoy this incredibly inspiring podcast with the awesome Andrea Mclean. This is the Mi365 podcast series, and I'm delighted that my guest today is Andrea Mclean. Andrea, how are you?
I'm great, and it is really, really nice to finally be here.
Thank you.
We finally sorted this out.
Yes, we did, because you thought Hampstead Heath, and I live in Haywards Heath, but it's quite ironic because my parents live in, it's all about a heath, but you found they're about 80 miles apart from each other, but you made it. Thank you so much.
Not at all, really.
I'm
happy to eventually have made it.
Yes, you did. And we're going to be talking about your book, which has just come out, called Confessions of a Menopausal Woman.
Yes.
But before we get stuck into that, tell us a little bit about yourself for those people who don't know who you are.
Oh gosh, well, you and I go way back. We met in the old days of GMTV.
Yes.
Which I suppose people now know as GMB, Good
GMB.
Morning Britain. Well, it's clearly missing a couple of letters.
Yes.
Because it used to be GMTV, which is Good Morning Television. I started my TV career there, I suppose. I did the weather, which was awesome. And then they found out that I'm actually a trained journalist, so then I got asked to do more reporting and that sort of thing. So then I just ended up doing all sorts of stuff, hosting different strands, which is how you and I met.
Yes.
So going around the country
On
in
a
a lovely
coach.
bus.
Yes.
Doing all that sort of stuff. And then I ended up, basically all I did was move downstairs at ITV, and I became the host of Loose Women, which is what I do now.
So tell us about Loose Women, because it's a really popular program. And I must admit, I actually like watching it because I just find it's a really interesting insight into often what women think. I know it's not just for women, but all the people on the show are
Yeah. Do you know what's interesting is all men start that with, I must admit I actually watched.
Yeah, as if there's something
exactly
wrong with it.
why
Why am I apologising for that? I don't know.
I don't know. It's almost like a little bit of guilty pleasure.
Yeah.
And I love it. I love that men do engage and watch the show. I get a lot of men, particularly older retired men, sidling up to me in supermarkets. And I can always tell because they'll kind of look at me sideways like, yeah, that definitely is her. Right, and then they pretend to meddle with peas or whatever.
Always peas.
Or whatever, give peas a chance, so they do. And then they'll kind of sidle over to me, excuse me, you are her, aren't you? And I have to ascertain who, because sometimes people think I'm Christine Bleakley, so that's really interesting when they ask where's Frank.
I can see the resemblance, yes.
And then they say, I do rather like your programme. I didn't used to, but my wife used to talk about it. And what they've found is that actually, as you say, it's a huge insight into the female psyche. The fact that we can leap from topic to topic like monkeys through the jungle, going from absolute devastation and heartbreak to roaring with laughter in minutes, because that's how women communicate and that's how we talk and we share all our experiences, good and bad, and we bond and empathise and we cajole. And there's no competitiveness in terms of, I'm actually doing all right, compared to a group of men sitting around talking. What's really interesting is actually today, the key subject on our show was male suicide. Yeah. And one of the things that we find, obviously working on a very female-centric program, is that all our lives have been touched in some way, by this. And the reasoning that we've discovered behind it, talking to other men, is their inability to talk and share.
Yeah.
And that's where men can learn from a program like Loose Women, that it's just being able to put your ego to one side for just one moment and say, actually, I feel really vulnerable. And people will respond to you, to not be afraid to open up and say how you're really feeling.
I didn't know that you spoke about that today, because obviously it's been in the news quite a lot, and I'm always curious as to why anyone would want to commit suicide. And I think in many cases it must be because of some sort of anguish that person is feeling, or the inability to express how they're thinking and feeling. And I think that's something that women tend to be much better at, is to just express what is actually going on, what they're experiencing. But did you always think you would end up doing what you ended up doing? I mean, how long did you do the weather for? And you said you enjoyed doing the weather. What was it about doing the weather you actually enjoyed?
Did I set out to do it? No, I trained as a journalist. My first introduction to journalism was when I was 15, and I did work experience on the local paper. Then I started a really rubbish school magazine. I wrote throughout my teens and my 20s. I moved to London to be a journalist. So in my head, I had this dream. I was, going to be Carrie Bradshaw before I even knew who Carrie Bradshaw was in the whole Sex and the City thing. And I wanted to work for Cosmopolitan or Marie Claire or one of these. And I ended up working for a features agency based in Kentish Town, which is very far removed from Cosmopolitan and Marie Claire. And loved it and really enjoyed it. But it turned out I'd misread a job application in one of the trade papers. And I got a phone call after I'd started working saying, would you be interested in coming in for this job? And randomly it turned out it was an audition to be a weather presenter. I know. I'd misread. It said something like a knowledge of geography and something. I thought, well, I did geography A-level, and I can do this. Wow. And so I thought this was the funniest thing in the whole world, that I'd got this so wrong. So I turned up, and we were given really fast briefing instruction, but I knew shorthand because I was a trained journalist. So I got down everything the guy said, and he went, right, take everything I've said, stand in front of that camera, go. I found it really easy, because really it's like being a journalist. You take a lot of very complex information, break it down into a way that people at home will understand, and that's it.
Wow.
And I ended up doing that for 18 months for the Weather Channel, and then I got a job on GMTV.
So it was for the Weather Channel, and then were you headhunted from GMTV to do...
do you know, if I wanted to positively reframe it, I could call it that, but no, I got made redundant.
Yeah.
And
okay.
it was the best thing that ever happened to me.
Why?
Because it was serendipitous. The person who had been doing the weather on GMTV had quit that week and gone on to pastures new. I heard through the grapevine there was obviously a vacancy going. I would never have applied for the job if I'd been still employed. The Weather Channel disappeared. It didn't work over in this country, and I went over to GMTV and got the job. Do you want to know how I got the interview?
Yes, I most definitely do, of course.
I sent off my photo thinking, oh, okay, well, I know how to do the weather, I'll send that off. And the then editor, his secretary, opened his post, started laughing, walked into his office and went, your girlfriend's applied to be a weather girl. And he went, what? And apparently I was a spitting image of the then editor of GMTV's girlfriend. So they called me in just to see if I looked as like her in real life.
Wow.
Now, I didn't know any of this. I just thought, oh, amazing, I've got this interview with this,
When did they tell you that?
Oh, years later. I never found out till years later. And it turned out, he said, well, while you're here, you might as well do a screen test. And I did it, and I didn't even get the job. I got some holiday cover and then ended up getting the job.
So you got some holiday cover for someone else that wasn't there?
They'd got somebody else in to do the main job. He didn't work out. So then they got me in while they were trying to find someone, and eventually said, oh, we'll stick with her. I've never been given a job in a kind of, ta-da, you're the most amazing thing ever, I want you. I've always kind of just sort of fallen in.
I think it's one of the most fascinating things, because obviously you've had a career in television for quite a while. 20
odd years now, yeah.
Which is pretty remarkable, because most people don't have any form of longevity like you do. But I think often people think, oh, you must have just just hit you like that.
I signed a 21-year contract and
No,
that's not how it works at all.
There's lots of things I want to ask you about, like how you keep your feet on the ground where you're surrounded, but in a world that is a bit kind of crazy. But let's just, when we talk about the weather, was that something you enjoyed doing?
Yeah. Sorry, that was the second half of the question. Why did I enjoy doing the weather? It's a great job.
Yeah.
I found it fascinating. I found it really interesting. I loved the whole technology of it,
Yes,
it was like a screen like this, and there's nothing there. And I kind of loved playing with it. But do you know, the main thing I loved about it was the team that I worked with.
Yeah.
The crew at GMTV were amazing. And what's brilliant now is working on Loose Women. A lot of them are the same people. The same people.
Yeah.
So I still see a lot of the same camera boys. When I was in the studio, it was a great laugh. It was great fun. I shared a dressing room with Penny Smith.
Oh, she's hilarious.
Who is fabulous.
Yeah.
She always made me late. I could say we always made each other late. No, she mainly made me late.
Yeah.
Mainly because she could run faster than me, so she could get behind her desk quicker. The amount of weather reports I started by going, I literally ran down the corridor. But also being sent all around the country. That had good and bad points, because you'd get the call late in the day and you'd have to suddenly be in Skegness the next day. That was quite hard. But the camaraderie and the sort of Dunkirk spirit, I really loved.
So, what I remember about you doing the weather is how much you actually just seem to, like you said, just to enjoy doing the weather.
Yeah.
And I think lots of people like to see people enjoy doing what they're doing, even if it was raining. And you were talking about the fact, in a way, that it was raining in a fun way. People go, well, it might be raining, but I still feel good about the weather.
I've always had that mindset, though.
My mindset
of I'm up anyway. I might as well have a great time.
Yeah.
There is absolutely.
Have you always had that?
Yes.
Where did you get that from?
I think you're born with it. I think some people are just born with, either it's too hot now, it's a terrible day, or waking up, thinking it's a sunny day. I love a sunny day.
Yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I actually have sad, which you would never think if you met me on a grey day, but I do. But somehow deep inside me, I think, I'm up, come on, get on with it.
Yeah.
I'm cold, I'm outside, I'm going to feel just as cold if I'm miserable, so I might as well have a laugh.
Is that part of your kind of motto for life, do you think, which is just make the most of it?
Yes. Yeah. To the point that I push myself too far, I end up exhausted, I try and do 101 things at once, because I think, come on, every day is an opportunity.
Yeah. So I've got to ask you a few things about it. We must talk about the book, but tell me what you're really passionate about.
Gosh, so many things. Staying upright. Mainly staying upright. What am I... Do you know that passions change as you move through life? At the moment, it's very strongly linked to the book, and this isn't a sort of plug, it's an explanation. I nearly didn't write this book because I didn't want to talk about the subject matter. Now, the subject matter is the menopause. It's called Confessions of a Menopausal Woman. Now, the reason I had to end up talking about it was because I got outed on telly by the lovely Linda Robson.
Yeah.
Linda Robson of Birds of a Feather fame. She's also known as Baggy Mouth, because you can't tell her anything. She got a baggy mouth.
Yeah.
And everyone knew I was, for lots of various medical reasons, I had to have a full hysterectomy.
Yeah.
And I was booked in to have the operation at 7 a.m. the next day after doing Loose Women. And it was just before we went on air. Linda said, so what are you going to say? I'm not going to say anything. She went, you're going to have to say something, love. They're going to think you've been fired.
Yeah.
It never even crossed my mind that people would think that. And so we went on air, and she knows what I'm like, which is that I'll probably just keep quiet until it gets to the end and then go, oh, I ran out of time. And we had about 20 seconds left by the end of the show, and I was saying something, and she went, excuse me, love, never mind all that. You've got something to say, haven't you? Oh my God, it's on live TV. So I ended up kind of, yes, actually, tomorrow I'm having a full hysterectomy, and I'm going to be off air for 4 to 6 weeks. And I'll see you then. And sobbed all the way home, thinking, oh my word, now everyone knows.
Yeah.
What I didn't know, because obviously I was unconscious sort of 12 hours later, having the operation, 10,000 women got in touch.
Wow.
That's 10,000 women who were either suddenly going through the menopause, had had a hysterectomy, were going through the menopause because of a slow build-up. Either way, all these women, and they were clamouring for information. They wanted to know, not just how was I, because I'm a lady on the telly, but I was a lady on the telly who owned up to something that people don't really talk about. So while I was recovering, I started just sort of looking into some of the questions and very tentatively looking, because I still wasn't sure what I wanted to do about all of this. And for my mental processing of it all, I started writing. And then as I started writing and was reading all the stuff that women were saying to me, I realised actually there's this huge, huge part of our society that isn't listened to. And if you think that half the population of the whole world is female, roughly speaking, every woman will go through the menopause. If you get to that age, if you're lucky enough to live life long enough to get to that age, and when I say long enough, you can start in your mid-30s.
Yeah.
So people think that the menopause is this something that old ladies get. It's not. When you get to, middle age starts a lot younger than you realise. And actually the perimenopause, the time before, that's the difficult time. That's when your hormones are all starting to go out of whack. So I realised actually women needed to have a voice and also needed to get some information.
Someone needs to speak out about it, right? It's just like suicide. It's that someone needs to speak out and be a voice, because if people don't speak out about it, nothing ever gets done. And if someone like Donald Trump can become the president of a country because he chooses to speak out, what difference can it make from someone like you speaking out about a subject like menopause? And of all the things that men will never know I don't think we'll ever know what it's like, because we don't do what women do, but men have to live with women. And this is one of the things I would like people who are listening to this to get out of it, is to understand obviously what your experience was like, find out what that was like for you and what we can learn from what you went through, but what men need to know as well in terms of how we support women who are going through this change. Yeah. So first off, with the book, what is it that you want the book to do?
Reassure more than anything else. One, that just because I look shiny and put together and glamorous on the telly, I'm actually the same as everybody else.
Yeah.
I hurt the same way. I go through pain in the same way. It's not, being on TV does not make you some kind of superhero that you don't feel the same things as everybody else. So I am just like you. And also that everything you're feeling has a reason, and there's a biological and a mental explanation as to why you're feeling the way that you do. Because obviously the menopause can affect you in many ways, but mainly it comes down to mentally and physically. You do go a little bit mad, which is where I think it's so important for men to understand. We haven't stopped loving you, we just don't like you quite so much for a little period of time. It's the same
with the menstrual cycle. I mean, I've noticed that women will often change, and they can go from being quite nice to just being completely different for a day. And it's like, well, how do we play that? And it seems like when people are going through the menopause, it's like that may be taken to another level.
Yeah, it just lasts longer. And
what's actually happening then?
Your hormone levels are changing. So mainly it's your estrogen levels are completely plummeting.
And is that because the women are moving through a phase in their life where they're not going to be able to reproduce? Is that's so the body is going through a change?
Yeah. We in essence, we weren't meant to live this long.
Yeah.
We're living longer than ever, which is why it's so important to talk about it now. Because before you think, well, why wasn't it talked about in past generations? Because you were dead.
Yeah, absolutely. It's pretty difficult to talk about something. But also, it's probably wasn't the seen thing to do. It's like you don't talk about things like that. But why?
Because it's women's stuff, and also I think because it made men feel uncomfortable.
I think that's a massive part of it. So what do we do about it when you talk about it? It's like we want to fix it. Well, you can't fix it.
Well, look back through the generations. I don't think men wanted to fix it. They just didn't want to know about it. And I asked my mum about her experiences and then what she recalled from her mum. And she said, "Oh, Andrea, I don't even think my mum knew about it. Well, obviously she did know about it because, you know, my granny died at 79.
Yeah.
So, you know, she must have done. Just wasn't talked about. And as far as my mum was concerned, mum was 40, which is why I knew that I was going to be early when I started going through it as well. And it was mentioned once in our house. And my mum, I'm very like my mum, we're quite steady eddies, you know. And she'd started getting really quite ratty and quite difficult. And I can remember one time in the car, I was a teenager then, and she was getting really quite cross about something and very vocal, which is not like her at all. And she was like this. And she had a real old shout at all of us in the car. And then I can remember her just looking out the window like this. And my dad pulled over. And my parents are very Scottish. And he leaned over into the back seat and he just went, "Girls, your mum's going through the change. We're going to need to be very patient." And we went, okay.
Yeah.
And then he drove off and my sister and I kind of looked at each other like this. Not a clue. And it was the 80s and Teen Wolf was out. So we were very concerned. What kind of change is this that mum is going through? Yeah. Of course, you realise later, she went on HRT and her life improved greatly because her hormone levels balanced out. We didn't know any of that. We just knew that there was this blip in the road with mum, and then she was fine.
So what about you? What was it like for you going through that? And is it something you're still going through?
Yeah, it's such a weird one. I started when I was 38.
And how did you know?
Young.
I mean, what sort of signs? I'm sorry, you don't have to reveal
No,
all.
not
But
at
in terms
all.
of mentally, what was it like?
Night sweats mainly for me, and then it's such a difficult one for me because that was the kind of key symptom. And then I went on HRT for a little while, and then I got very distracted because I got divorced. I was going through quite a difficult time, and I got busy with that rather than thinking about anything else. Then once all that calmed down, so I suppose I was, how old was I? 42, something like that. And then I thought, actually, you know, everything I'm feeling, it's not related to, you know, post-divorce traumatic disorder.
Yeah.
I'm not feeling quite myself. And so then, and that was just in terms of physical symptoms, the night sweat started coming back in earnest. And any women who are watching now who've experienced a night sweat will know what that's like. It's not like a hot summer's night where you can't quite sweat and you're tossing and turning. It's like the sun is inside you. The heat is unreal.
I hope my wife wouldn't mind me saying, but I know when she's had a few night sweats sometimes, she becomes like a boiler.
Yeah.
It's so hot, and then she just sweats so much, and it must be, I mean, really uncomfortable.
Yes, yeah. So that was, and it's the kind of thing you can't even turn the pillow over to the cool bit. There is no cool bit.
Yeah.
It's just everything is so. I mean, you can literally wring your nightie or whatever. But then also, and again, this is something that any women watching who are maybe on the cusp of it and thinking, do you know, I get that, was anxiety. Now, I hate to say suffered with, because suffered with sounds so kind of melodramatic.
Everyone has it.
Yeah, but it's something I've realised now that has been a part of me for a very long time. But I've had a series of really quite horrendous and extreme panic attacks at various stages of my life. And if anyone's had a panic attack, it's not just feeling a little bit fluttery. It's you think you're having a heart attack, and you think you're going to die. It's horrible. I was feeling more and more like that all the time. And then just a general anxiety about life, everything. Normal things that I would cope with, I couldn't cope with anymore. And also, normally I'm quite good at keeping a lid on that, so no one would necessarily know. I couldn't hide it. And I was also getting more ratty. Now, I'm not a ratty person. I'm quite a steady person. So again, I went back to my doctors and had a chat. And it turned out that I was perimenopausal. I made the decision to go on HRT. It's not a decision for everyone. So not everyone can go on it, of course.
Yes.
And not everyone wants to. I chose to, and it made a big difference to me. It just balanced everything out. And this is one of the key things that I think is so important to make sure that we talk about this. A lot of women of my age, in that age bracket, will go to the doctors and say they're feeling anxious, nervous, things that normally they could cope with in life, they're not coping with, and they get handed antidepressants.
Antidepressants, yeah.
And I'd already been on antidepressants. I had postnatal depression. So I'd been on antidepressants for a number of years, had weaned myself off them, because even though life was hard at the time, I wanted to feel it. I wanted to be sure that everything I was feeling was a real feeling, and I wasn't just, my brain wasn't numb. And I think that's something that an informed woman going into the doctors about her symptoms means that she can make an informed decision about the options that she's given. And that's why I think a book like mine is so important. Yes. Because if you can go in just knowing, right, these are 34 symptoms for the menopause. If you tick at least 8 of them, go and have a blood test. Keep a diary of everything that you're feeling, so that you can't just go in and say, I feel a bit like this. If you can go in and say, I've felt like this for 6 months, I feel it at these times, these are my mental feelings, these are my physical symptoms, at least you have some kind of backup to go in with. And therefore you're in a stronger position to either, if you don't feel that antidepressants are right for you, I'm not anti-antidepressants.
Yeah, of course, it just might just the wrong thing.
It might not be the right for you.
I think one of the things that I really love about you is just how honest you are about what you've been through. And, anxiety is something which everyone feels it, but not many people talk about it. And I would imagine a lot of people are very liberated by who you are and how honest you are about your life experiences. And when we look at the whole menopausal thing, what are things that people can do that can help them go through that experience, go through that challenging time? Are there things that you found that help, like having a sense of humour, or was it exercising, meditating? Are there any things that have kind of helped you along the way?
All of the above. Just need to pause for a minute because my nose is running. Can I grab a tissue?
Of course. Can you...
I've got one in my bag. If you just pass my handbag. I thought rather than sitting and sniffing all through the rest of this.
That's okay.
But yes, I will give you the answer to all of that more. No, that's one thing I've learned from loose women. I started off quite shy and a bit reluctant to talk. After 11 years of doing it, there is no off limits.
Yeah, because some of the people
maybe
are there.
Apart from my kids and
how Finley's now what?
Finley starts his GCSEs on Monday. Oh my God. That's mad, isn't it? Little Finley. He's great. It's really good. They're both lovely. They're lovely kids. They're great.
Your daughter, right?
Mm-hmm. Got a daughter. She's 11. So yeah, I'm just starting that with her.
Oh wow, so she's going through...
Yeah, it's happening at either end of the scale in our house. Right, that's definitely on silent, just in case. Okay, right, I'm ready to go again. Sorry about that. Actually, do you know, should I stick it up my sleeve? I'll stick it in my pocket, just in case.
Listen, don't worry if you need to...
I can just throw it on the couch. There we go.
I've got a few ideas of what we can do to get this... Yeah.
There, okay.
Carry on. What was I saying?
What would I do?
Oh yeah, so I'll ask the question again, yeah? So we just carry on?
Yeah, carry on.
So I'm really curious as to what kind of natural things have you done to deal with this kind of challenging time that you've had? Like what, exercise, does that help? Meditation, a certain type of diet?
All of them. All of them. I think the first thing is diet. It's crazy because people call it the menopause, the change, as if it's a bad thing, and actually it can be a change for good.
Yeah.
Because we all kind of bumble through, especially our attitudes to food. Because I think, when you first leave home and you're thrown into the wild world of cooking for yourself, there are habits that you form that you don't even realize that you carry right the way through. Whether you fully embrace cooking and it's something that you love and you love cooking for your family and friends and getting everyone around, or whether you're a getting by kind of cook and it's just whatever your kids will eat, which is quick and easy. You're not necessarily eating what is best for your body.
Yes.
And when you get to a point where you have to start looking at food as not something that you deny yourself because you're on a diet, which many women will have got to their mid to late 40s, and their relationship with food will be, in many cases, it's tempered by that this is a treat and this is something that I deserve to have, or oh, I can't have that because I've not been good enough, or I better not have that because you know I'm going to put on weight. And you look at food in a very odd way, I think, and you've done it with this drip 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 that you don't even realize you're looking at food in a strange way
until something like, I suppose, happens.
Yeah.
Because food for you, I've watched you on Instagram. I mean, cooking for you is that something you enjoy, or is it just something you just got to do?
It's never been I've been very lucky. I've never had an issue with food. I'm dairy intolerant, so I can't eat a lot of I suppose what you would call bad foods, if you wanted to term it that way. And I've always eaten very well. But it's never been a forced thing. That's just how I like to eat. Sugar is my main thing. I do have a very sweet tooth. But for me, when I became very, very poorly a few years ago. Funny enough, I remember speaking to you through that time, and you recommended diet and exercise and having a look into that. So when it came time for my hysterectomy, funny enough, I thought back to our conversation. I thought, right, let's strip everything back and start remembering that food is a fuel. It's not just this thing that you eat to stop you being hungry. Food is you're putting food into your body for a reason, and you need to think about what you're putting in and what it's doing.
What it's doing, yes.
And that was a bit of a game changer, because I started looking into what foods are suitable for if you're a woman of my age and going through my sort of changes. And it made me a little bit more adventurous. And do I love cooking? Not really. I'm not suddenly, going to go on MasterChef. Although I might stand a better chance if I went on it now, because I'm a bit more interested. But I became much more interested in what I was putting together. So, for example, I make a lot more dal now. Now, things that have got lentils. Chickpeas, oily fish, all those sort of things that you've kind of heard about in magazines that they're good for you. Stop thinking of them as being foods that are diet foods. They're just foods that are really, really good for your body, because they're sort of hormone balancing, and they're what your body is actually asking for.
It's crazy, isn't it? Because we all know that food is medicine, because if you didn't eat, you'd know that. And if you ate terrible food for a long time, you'd know that. But it's strange how for some of us, we have to get ourselves to a condition where something bad happens, where we then start to appreciate food and see food as something that can help. But I suppose that's about taking some form of responsibility, and I think a lot of people, they don't want to, because maybe they just want to take something to make them better. But have you found that changing your diet has helped you? Yeah,
I mean, like I was very lucky that I ate naturally quite well anyway. It just meant that I fine-tuned it. Cut right back on caffeine.
Yes.
Love a cafetiere of coffee. I used to make one of those big cafetières in the morning, and I would get through it in a whole day. And what I would do is the first cup would be warm, and then after that, as the day went on, I'd just pour it cold, heat it in the microwave, That's a lot of coffee.
Yeah, and coffee can definitely play around. It tricks the body to kind of think that you're not tired when you are.
And actually your body telling you tired,
means
your body
to sleep.
Means you need
so let's
to
talk
sleep.
about sleep. What, I mean, I would imagine when you live a life on television, and you have to probably think ahead quite a bit. I mean, how do you find sleeping? I mean,
I've had good and bad times with sleep. And that was where cutting back the caffeine made a big difference. And I didn't say cutting it out, because I think having a cup of really good quality coffee is actually, it's not a bad thing at all. And coffee is not the enemy. It's just how you. It's like everything. Cake isn't an enemy. Just don't eat a whole cake. And what I do is I have that one cup, and I look forward to it, and I enjoy it, and I relish every moment of it. But that's it. I only want one. And I found my sleep after having the hysterectomy, I fell off a cliff, because basically it's like your hormone tap's being switched off. So for me, the hardest bit was sleep loss. I could not sleep. I'd fall asleep, and then you wake up.
So you went from one challenge to another, literally, from thinking that everything would be better, to then having to face another challenge. And how did you deal with that? Because, I mean, try living without sleep. It's like...
It was hard.
And then try having willpower to make good decisions without sleep. It's like impossible.
It is. How did I get through it? I wrote a lot. A lot of the book actually was written in the early hours of the morning because I was really, there's a big chapter of it actually that's in diary form, and I didn't change anything. Apart from maybe
so
some spelling.
It's like a real flow of consciousness.
It's raw, and there's bits about literally I'm sitting here at 2 a.m. because I cannot sleep. I'm in the kitchen and I'm at my wit's end. Do you know, it sounds like such a silly thing to do. It's the same with anxiety. The worst thing you can say to someone who's anxious is, come on, just relax. The worst thing you can say to someone who can't sleep is, well, just try and relax and think nice things. And it doesn't
like
work
from there to
that
there.
way. So actually, it's better to just look at it head on and go, okay, you're clearly not going to sleep right now. Get up and go and do something. And sometimes even just getting up and reading a book for a little while, or putting on some rubbish telly. There's some amazing things on in the middle of the night, and accepting it rather than fighting it. And then actually your patterns will sort of restore. And that happened with me. For me, mentally, there's been a big learning curve, I suppose, over the past year, and a lot of that has come from learning to not push against something. That if something's happening to you, whether it is sleep loss, whether it is anxiety, even if I can feel myself getting depressed, I've had issues with that before, rather than, no, I'm not, you know, I will get to sleep, or I'm not anxious, I can do this. It's actually going, do you know what, yeah, you are, and stepping back and letting it happen. And actually it's a wave that washes over you rather than you standing trying to push back the waves. It doesn't work.
It's crazy, isn't it? Because it's almost like you have to go through some real difficult things to get to the point of realizing that. I remember someone saying to me, you know, if you're feeling depressed, don't say I am depressed. It's almost like saying, I'm noticing some depression. I'm noticing there is some anxiety there, rather than thinking you are that. Because in most cases it will pass, I suppose, especially if you find a way to do something that, I don't know, maybe makes you feel a bit better. Yeah,
and again, what's interesting is a lot of women have known that I'm writing this book. And so I've had quite a few people either contact me on Facebook or also stopping me in the street, which is really nice. And the main thing that they talk about is a loss of sense of self and a loss of confidence in themselves, and that sort of general anxiety, you know. God, I used to be able to drive anywhere, and now I can only drive down roads that I feel really comfortable with, and that's a really common thing with women. And I think also, if you can just accept that, this is how I'm feeling right now, okay.
Yeah, it will pass.
It will pass.
And even if it doesn't let it pass, it manifests.
But if it doesn't pass, that's okay.
Yeah, that's
I'm
okay
just
too.
not going to drive at night, or do something that makes me feel uncomfortable.
So what do you want the legacy of the book to be? Because I've got a feeling it's going to...
Just check I'm not making noises.
That's okay. What? Is there someone down there?
Yeah.
Fair enough. What do you want the legacy of this book to be?
I want women to read this book and feel better about themselves, to feel informed, to feel, I'm not the only one. And to
start having conversations about it.
Yes. 100% have conversations about it. The only way that you can empower is to inform. And there's funny enough, there's recipes at the back of the book. There's different exercises in the book. Try and get yourself feeling strong, because when you're going through something like this, you feel so weak physically. Exercise can hugely help, but this is the biggest bit. Do not beat yourself up if you fall off the wagon, or you stop, or you don't see it as getting it wrong. You've just not really done all the things that you could have done. Reframe the word should to could. I could have eaten really well today, but I didn't. I should have eaten really well, but I didn't. It's a subtle change.
It's a subtle shift which can make a massive difference. I'm sure you've maybe seen clapperboards, where they say, right, take one. Someone said this to me recently. It's like a mistake is a mistake. It's just a mistake. You can go again. You can go again. You can go again, and look to be better. Actually, you said something there that you triggered something in my mind. Why do women, do you think, possibly more than men, strive for perfection so much and beat themselves up where they don't get it? And do you have a theory about that? I'm quite curious.
Yeah, I do, because I am 100% like that. I've always been a good girl. I like colouring in the lines. I like doing everything neatly and well, and I like getting praise for when I do things well, and that's how I was brought up, to be a good girl and you know, do things properly, and I think that's how we raise girls. I think we raise boys to express themselves and be boisterous, and boys will be boys and make a mess, and I think girls on the whole, of course I'm generalizing, but on the whole, are raised to, you know, don't make such a fuss. Just stop. If a girl creates a fuss, they're showing off, or they're, you know, being a drama queen. If a boy creates a fuss, well, he's just exuberant.
He's just being a boy.
He's just being a boy. And I think we need to stop with those differentiations. At the end of the day, we're just humans. And I think boys and girls are, before they know any better, are equally creative and strong and bright. But we kind of have packaged them and put them into these little categories. And I think that it's so ingrained in us as women to hold it all in. For example, look at all the Me Too stuff that's out there at the moment. You know, people behave very badly towards women, and we are socially ingrained to smile nicely and step away from the problem, rather than to say, actually, you're making me feel really uncomfortable doing that, and put it right back on the person. And I know that from myself, because that's how I have reacted in the past, is just to edge away and not make a fuss and never raise it, or what have you. And I'm really pleased that hopefully my kids, things will be very different for them, and they will have been raised in a not just by me, but in a different social environment, so that they can say, actually, I don't like what you're doing.
Yeah, and that there needs to be a lot more of that. I think one of the things that we're on a movement at the moment for a new era of manning up, because we used to talk about manning up like, you know, drink another pint of beer and put your socks up, rather than, I think manning up is men really just opening themselves up to listen, to be more curious, to be more respectful. And I would love lots of men, and I'll be one of them, that will read your book and I'm sure learn about something which is really important, because it's going to affect someone who you know, and it might be someone you know very well, it might be someone you share a bed with. I also get the impression by the name of the title, Confessions, that it's probably quite humorous as well. There's probably, knowing you, there's probably a little bit of humour in that.
Gosh, if you can't laugh when life is going completely wrong, then when can you laugh? Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're so right, because whether you're sharing a bed with a woman, or you're sharing a desk with a woman, or you're sharing a lift with a woman, at some point in your day you will be with a woman who is going through the menopause. And if as a man you know how to react to that and just think, okay, in the same way as you would if you saw a lady who was pregnant and you'd maybe offer her your seat, you just think, okay, right, she looks like she could maybe do the window being open. Bosses need to be more aware in terms of, let a lady have a fan on her desk if she wants a fan. Maybe be a bit more open-minded to letting her wear a slightly different uniform if she needs clothes that, you know, need to breathe. This is something I know that nurses and the police force and all sorts are looking into this. Again, an informed man means that he's a supportive man. And I feel sorry for men a lot of the time, because they don't know. And you can't be cross with someone if they don't know. You've just got to tell them.
We don't even asking for directions. We'd rather walk into a wall because Google Maps is telling us that something's through that wall and it's clearly got it wrong, rather than just saying, excuse me, can you help me, or can I help you? So I would encourage people to, we have the power, that there'll be, you know, thousands of people that listen to this. Everyone has the power to go and buy a copy of this book, and if they don't want to read it, give it to someone. But that must be quite strange, giving it to someone. But you could, but everyone can write reviews, and the power of reviews, like, you know, TripAdvisor and massively on Amazon, has huge power. So I encourage everyone who reads this book to write a review.
Oh yes, please.
And because we have that ability to positively get the message out there even more. There's a couple of things I want to talk to you about, and it's been going through my head when we were talking, and it's about playing at the edges. And you seem to be someone also who is happy to play at the edges and to put yourself out there to be shot down. And a lot of people don't want to do that, but then when you're in the public eye and you put yourself into a position of real vulnerability to do things you've never done before, and I know that you've done that already, I know twice, but maybe more times. You did Dancing on Ice, right?
Yes.
And you did the thing. What was that one? That circus thing was absolutely mental. I'm surprised
Tumble.
you didn't tumble. I mean,
and
what
you
is
did.
You call a program called Tumble? What do you think is going to happen? And you just mentioned about you just put that out there about celebrity MasterChef, because I reckon that might be coming your way.
Okay.
Is that something that you see yourself in a privileged position, that you're being asked to do these things and you think, yeah, well, you know what, I'm being asked, I'm going to do it? Or is it because you think, what could I learn from this? And
All of it.
why put yourself through those things? Surely it's just easier just to stay in your comfort zone and not do things like that.
I think the reason that I do it is sort of twofold. When I was younger, as in my 20s, I went backpacking for a year. And I did it because I thought it sounded like an awesome thing to do. And I had some amazing adventures while I was doing it, and it was great. And when you remember, when I went backpacking, mobile phones hadn't been invented yet, nor had email. So you literally went off the grid for a year, and it was a case of finding a payphone to ring home and tell your parents you're okay. So it was a proper adventure. And when I started my working life, again working on GMTV, I was in my 20s. And I was given such incredible opportunities to do some amazing things. I wing walked. That's huge. It was a crazy thing.
Yes.
I think they heard me scream from the length and breadth of the country. I rap jumped off Table Mountain, which is abseiling but face first. Hated it, but it was my idea and I wanted to have a go at it, thought it was amazing. I said yes to anything that came. I parachuted. I've done 3 parachute jumps. So the whole idea of life giving you these amazing opportunities, I've never been the kind of person that thought, well, okay, I think I'll pass. My attitude was always, I want to get to 80 and look back and think, look what I did. I did some amazing things. And that hasn't left me. So even though, bits of me are kind of broken and creaky and everything else, when something comes up like dancing on ice, what a hoot. Yeah. I didn't care whether I was going to win or not. I mean, I clearly wasn't ever going to win, but what an amazing experience.
You gave it everything you had.
But I gave
you never leave anything in the tank.
No, and but I treat life like that. I give life everything I've got, and I would rather kind of collapse face first across the finishing line on the day I die than kind of, trot along. I give everything to everything that I do.
Wow. And what do you want the legacy of your life to be? It sounds like something...
Oh, crikey. Yeah, she gave it her best shot.
Yeah.
How about that?
Well, they said, I don't think it's true about, what was the actor Spike Milligan who's on his grave. It doesn't say this, but people used to think it did on his gravestone. It said, see, I told you I was ill. Because he probably wanted people to laugh.
Yeah.
And it seems like you enjoy the role you're in probably more than ever, because you know you've got this chance to inspire other people to break out of their discomfort and grow and learn. And is it?
I feel that now with the book. I never felt that previously, because I never see myself as someone who is this person who's on TV. I'm just me who happens to a job that people can see. Yeah. That's how I sort of view myself. I see it that everybody goes out to work every day. It just so happens I'm doing a job that you can sit at home and watch. There's no difference. When all these women got in touch, something clicked in my head, and I realized actually I am more than that in their eyes. In my eyes, I still get the tube to work and walk and everything else. But in terms of, you said at the start of your question that living life on the edge in terms of putting myself out there. In terms of trying crazy things, yes, that's a huge part of me. In terms of exposing myself and my vulnerabilities and my flaws, that's taken time. Yeah. Because it goes right back to that whole thing of being a good girl who colours in and is always very neat. Just conforms,
right? Does what you think's expected of you, rather than...
It didn't feel polite to actually say, do you know what? I'm really hurting right now, scared right now. I've made huge mistakes. I've had terrible lapses of judgment. I've messed up on a huge scale, and that sat really heavily with me when I was still in my colouring in the lines stage. Now I've got to the point where I think, do you know what, I am so not perfect. I've made, would you call them mistakes? Yes. Am I glad that I did them in the end? In a weird way, yes. I'm sorry that I cocked up, for want of a better word. But actually life has taken me on this sort of path, and I would have been on that path. And actually I am where I am right now because of the mistakes I made before. So were they mistakes, or were they just decisions that I made based on how I was feeling and the information I had at the time that actually were meant to lead me to here? And I'm now of that mind, rather than thinking, oh my God, I've, hugely messed up.
Rather than just bearing that for the rest of your life, rather than thinking, okay, how can I learn and move on from this?
No one ever punished themselves more than I did whenever I got something wrong. And I can see now, again, with the benefit of hindsight and a lot of reading, I read a lot of self-help books, including yours, very good. He writes a very good self-help book.
Thank you very much.
That is like carrying a hot stone and expecting the person you're cross with to feel the heat. It doesn't work. And so stop. I wouldn't treat my friend the way I treat myself. And so I've learned to stop doing that.
And that's one of the biggest things that you want people to get out of this book, is to perhaps change the relationship they have with themselves and not be so hard on themselves.
Yeah.
Let's get that book out there. I lastly just want to finish up with talking about, so we were quite fortunate to have the opportunity to go on the road and do this thing. And there were two people who we had the opportunity to work with, and I'll never ever forget them. One was, I think his name was Lee, who had a phobia of vegetables. I shouldn't laugh, but because, it was pretty serious for him, but I'll never forget working with him. And do you remember we got him eventually drumming with some leeks? And then, of course, there was that other lady who had such severe agoraphobia, who wouldn't go outside of her house. And for me, that was such a great opportunity to show people at home, what is possible, that you can have a problem or a situation and you can get over it.
Yeah.
And the challenge that you've faced in your life, from anxiety to depression to things not working out, it seems like the true essence of who you are has always come through. Do you believe there's a part of us that can overcome the challenges that we face?
Yeah, and I think you're given what you can handle.
Yes.
And sometimes I kind of go, I don't think I can handle anymore. But you do, you can, and you will.
So what's next for you?
A lie down.
Yes, I bet. It's been a long day. And, my coach once said to me with a book, my first book was, I couldn't get anyone to publish it. Then I found a publisher. Then Manda Ursel reviewed it, got it in the Sunday Times. Next thing, Random House, HarperCollins went on this big journey of publishing. And then had a big meeting with Random House. 16 of them, 3 of us. My coach was sitting where you were sitting. And at the end, he didn't say anything. My agent was here. And I said, Rafa, do you want to say something? And he went, do you want me to say something? And I said, yes, please. He said, who here's ever been in love? So everyone put their hands up. And he goes, who here ever got a love letter from someone? I think everyone put their hands. And he said, who here ever read that love letter? And the more you read it, the more you felt what the person felt who wrote it. And some of them said yes. He goes, that's the book that we want to write. We want to write a book which talks to people, which either makes them throw it down and go, I can't read that, it's too personal, or they go, I can't put this book down because the book is talking to me.
Yeah.
And it sounds like the book that you've written, because you wrote it.
That's
and
amazing.
And you've put your energy into it. People are going to read this raw ride that you went on. And I'm looking forward to reading it. And I would encourage all of you, let's use our power, whether you're going to have the menopause, whether you know someone, you've had it, let's use our power to make a small purchase of buying the book, Confessions of a Menopausal Woman. Amazon, bookshops. Read it, review it, share it, and let's empower people. Andrea, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you coming to Haywards Heath as opposed to Hampstead Heath. I take full responsibility for that. But
I was a weather girl. Geography is supposed to be my strong point.
Well, you got here in the end.
I did,
So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Have a safe journey home. Thank you. We'll see you next time for another Mi365 podcast. That was awesome. That was amazing. Like it, comment, share it. Let's change the world. Not now, but right now.